Hi everyone, welcome to THT, and today we are going to be ranking the top 3 card of each color combination for Legend of the Falls. So this is my sort of official ranking for the sets, like I do before the release of every single set. It is an analysis that is going to be more accurate and more tested than the one I have for my first impression, even though, of course, it's still very early on. We don't have any metagame. And now we are. Usually, I do those like 1 week before the release of the set because we got the full spoiler list a little bit earlier than usual. I was able to make this list about 2 weeks before the release of the set, which is. So obviously, take everything I say with a grain of salt, as obviously it's gonna be we are still far away from having an established meta for Legend of the Falls. And also keep in mind that this ranking is not only done by myself, it's also I consulted the opinion of my teammates at Team Enigma, some of the best players in Europe, to make this ranking. So we hope that you guys are going to enjoy it. And just like I did for Jump to Lightspeed earlier this week, at the end of the season I will review this ranking and see what I get right and what I got wrong. I got a pretty good predictions in set 4, so hopefully I can do even better with set 5. So this video is sponsored by Card Market, the biggest marketplace to buy and sell cards. So starting off with Cunning Villainy, I have one honorable, new thing that I'm introducing as well for those ranking is that I'm going to be establishing my level of confidence in my ranking. So obviously some rankings can be a lot more fluctuating than others because of the dependence on the certain metagame. So some, for example, cards are extremely archetype dependent, so it's very difficult to predict how powerful they're going to be without knowing if the attached archetype to that card is going to see play or not. So I'm putting a level of confidence. The level of confidence basically indicates you how likely I think this prediction is going to come true. So for example, here I'm very confident that my ranking is going to be accurate in this case, so I'm putting confidence high. So so moving on here to Cunning Villainy, I'm going to of course move on to my honorable mention. And honorable mention decided to put Neil Marauder. Neil Marauder is going to be quite meta dependent because it's going to come down to whether this 4-5 stat line actually is something that is going to see play or not, which is not necessarily going to be the case. And of course, having only a 1 attack on the way back is kind of makes the card very vulnerable. So it is Underworld. I think it is a powerful card, and I think it's a good option, notably for decks like Cat Bane, but I still think that other 3 drops like Boba Fett are superior, so I think it's one additional option, and it's going to see a little bit of plays. That's why I put it in honorable mention. And Bronze, I decided to put Liberated by Darkness. And Liberated by Darkness is, in my opinion, going to be sort of a card that you're going to see in every single Force deck that plays this color combination, because it turns out that Force decks really don't have any difficulties in gaining the Force, and therefore any card that is just a superior version of an existing playable card but that requires the Force to be played is going to end up being played in those specific Force decks. And Liberated by Darkness is one of these cards. It is basically a strictly better version of Change of Hearts. Whenever you're playing a Force deck, the fact that it costs 1 less resource compared to Change of Heart is extremely relevant. So I'm anticipating that if you're going to be building a Force deck, playing that color combination, you're going to be including some amount of copies of Liberated by Darkness, either in your main deck or in your sideboard. In Silver, there's obviously the Shin Hati, which is one of the best 3 drops that has been printed for that color combination. It's very difficult to interact with because it's both shielded and hidden, and it has also the Force trait as well, which we know in this expansion is very, very relevant. It has a very low health, but it doesn't really matter because it's shielded and hidden, so it's the low health is not really a big deal, and the fact that it has a very attack value will allow it to get at least a guarantee attacked out of it. And that's an attack that's going to deal a lot of damage, so I think that's really, really strong. I think this is going to see play in most Cunning villainy decks. Probably not in Cat Bane because it's not Underworld, but other villainy Cunning decks, aggro, or even mid-range will want to run this card, especially if you're playing a false synergy deck. So to me, this is going to be my silver medal for Cunning Cunning Villainy. And then my number one with Cunning Villainy, I'm quite confident saying that Aura Sing is going to be the most impactful two drops, the most impactful, Cunning Villainy card we're going to have. It's not Force, but it is Underworld and Bounty Hunter, which are two very relevant trade, especially for Cat Bane. But this card is good in honestly almost any non-Force Cunning Villainy decks, as it basically has this 1/4 stat line with Ray 2, so basically on 3/4 on attack, and is also hidden. So those are like really excellent keyword to have. The fact that it has a low attack but cannot be attacked the turn it's been played is quite relevant because it has a low attack. So you are almost guaranteed to get yourself a solid attack out of Aura Sing before she gets to be attacked back, which I think is very nice. Another thing I like about this card is that there's simply just not a lot of great 2-drops in Cunning Villainy, and this is really giving you a premium 2-drops you can play in that color combination. It was probably one of the weakest color combinations as far as 2-drop is concerned, so Aura Sing is really going to be a great card in those decks. Next, we got my ranking for Cunning Heroism. I also just want to specify that not every single competitively playable card is going to make it to the video. There's tons of very niche playable competitive cards that I think are going to see play, but because they simply were not part of the top 3, did not make it to the video. And when I put something in an honorable mention, is because I truly believe that there's an argument to make this card into top 3. And it was just so difficult to fit it in because the color was very competitive. So in my confidence is quite high for this ranking as well. And my honorable mention is going to be Vernestra Row. So Vernestra Row, I think, is an incredible card in a Force focus Cunning Heroism deck, but it's a very specific thing. You need to be playing a False deck, and you need to be playing Cunning Heroism to be able to play that card. So I think this is a lot of things that is going to limit how much this card is going to see play, and that's why it's only an honorable mention. But obviously, this card is going to be seeing play in almost every single Force focus Cunning Heroism deck because it's basically a Falcon on the ground, and that's without the downside of the Falcon tax, which I think is very big. What can be a little bit tricky sometimes with this card is obviously that getting the Force is relatively easy, but getting the Force early in the game is not always easy. And the problem is, like, if your 2-drop gets blocked for some reason or gets shut down, then you don't really get to play this card on turn 2, which sometimes can be annoying. But even then, I still think the card is very strong, and the fact that it uses the Force but then get the Force right back by attacking right after, I think is very powerful. My bronze medal, I decided to put a card that was maybe not as flashy as Vernestra, but was more likely to see a wider amount of play, and this is the Naboo 1 Starfighter. So Naboo 1 Starfighter, 3/2 for 2 in space, is just really solid in Star Wars Unlimited, even if it has no ability. And more importantly, we're talking about adding a 2-drop in space in a color combination that previously did not have access to a 2-drop in space, to good 2-drops in space. Like, this color combination had pretty much no good 2-drop in space for a very long time, and Naboo 1 Starfighter does that really well, and for me deserve a bronze medal for that reason alone. Next, we got Qui-Gon Jinn. Qui-Gon Jinn is the card that, honestly, when I saw it, I thought this was one of the best 7-drop in the game. I've cooled down a lot on this card. It turns out that, yes, being able to snipe leaders on ambush is very powerful, but the problem is, by the time Qui-Gon Jinn comes to play, your opponent's 7 health leaders had a lot of time to be able to play and do a lot. The when defeated ability is powerful, but also quite situational, as it only targets non-leader ground units. So yeah, it just did not end up doing as well as I thought. It's a card that also there's a lot of competition in 7-drop in that color combination. We got, of course, Enfys Nest, and we also have the Han Solo Reluctant Hero, and all those kind of very strong 7-drops are kind of overshadowing Qui-Gon Jinn. I still think Qui-Gon Jinn is going to see a lot of play. I just don't think it's the bomb that people were expecting him to be when he was first revealed. So he's great, but I don't think he's as great as we thought. He's still a great card, and that's why he deserves a silver medal. He's going to see play in obviously those mid-range Cunning heroism decks, at least to some extent. My number one gold medal is Depa Bilaba, and some people might be surprised to see this card being put over Qui-Gon Jinn. And the reason why I rate this card over Qui-Gon Jinn is because it just simply has less competition, because it being a 6-drop and not a 7-drop, there's just simply not that many great 6-drop in that color combination. So the competition for Deba is a lot smaller, and she usually fits in the curve much better than Qui-Gon Jinn does. Also, the 5/7 stat line, ambush with Saboteur. I think everything on this card is relevant. Immediate impact on the game, can kill all of those 3/5 cards. Saboteur allows them to one-shot units that are shielded, and I think there's going to be a lot of shielded units in this meta. And obviously the fact that you can bypass sentinels and snipe a specific unit despite a sentinel is also very helpful as well. So it's just a really solid card. It also, once again, another way for you to get the Force out of nowhere, because it's Force and Jedi Republic. So overall, I think there's just more utility for this card compared to Qui-Gon Jinn. And because of the price point, she's just easier to fit in the curve. Next, we got the Cunning aspect. And this confidence on this one is low. The reason why my confidence on this one is very low is because there's simply just not that many great mono Cunning cards in this set. So it was very difficult to rate those cards because they were all like kind of pretty bad. So it was very hard to rate them. So my number 3, my bronze medal, is Trust Your Instincts, which is basically a shoot first with a +2 attack bonus instead of +1, but you have to use the Force to use it. I think if you are running a Force deck, I don't think it's an auto-include in a Force yellow deck, but I think if you're running a Force yellow deck, you should strongly consider playing this card. It's a very powerful effect that can really put an element of surprise. And basically, yes, you use the Force, but then you get the Force right back by attacking with a Force unit most likely. So it's really strong in those type of decks, because getting the Force is quite easy in a Force deck. So you want to try to play as many cards that basically use the Force as you can whenever you do. And I think Trust Your Instinct is a worthy effect. Whether you're going to find space for this card or not in your deck remains to be seen, but I think the card is pretty solid. In silver, we got Tip the Scale. Tip the Scale, I think, is a great addition to Cad Bane, as it's a card that can be grabbed from Jabba the Hutt, and it's a card that is really helpful against what I believe to be one of the most powerful deck against Cad Bane, which are control decks. So having a way to provide card advantage, get rid of the opponent's non-unique cards is very, very helpful. So yes, it's a worse version of Spark of Rebellion, but the fact that it can be played in Cad Bane without aspect penalty, and because it's a trick can be obtained by Jabba, I think is very, very helpful. And basically Jabba the Hutt Tip the Scale is going to be a powerful anti-control engine, so I'm expecting to see some amount of cards Tip the Scales in the sideboard of Cad Bane, because it's such a great tools to fight control decks, which are historically been the worst matchup for Cad Bane decks. So for that reason alone, I think Tip the Scale deserves a silver medal. Next, number 1 is the Legacy Run. So this one is a very tricky one to rate, because as good as the card is, it really depends on one very specific archetypes. And realistically, I mean, yes, you can play this in Palpatine Yellow, you can play this in but really, like, realistically, the best deck to be running this card in is going to be Thrawn Yellow. So Thrawn 4 Yellow, to be specific, because you can obviously get the double trigger on the when defeated effect, dealing 12 damage divided among your choice. The combination here with Sneak Attack is absolutely absurd. You can completely reset a board as early as turn 3. The card is obviously great combination with Chimera. You can basically just even run multiple copies of Legacy Run. Play Legacy Run, you play another Legacy Run, because it's unique, you get to destroy one of them. There's just multiple ways to just trigger the effect and do some really crazy damage. And I think this is a really, really powerful card in this specific deck. And I think if Thrawn Yellow cease plays, in set 5, it will be because of Legacy Run. I think Legacy Run is a card that could single-handedly make Thrawn yellow or playable archetypes in set 5. With all that being said, I still think that Thrawn yellow has some issues, and I don't necessarily think it's guaranteed that this is going to be a meta deck. And obviously, if Thrawn yellow does not see play, then the Legacy one won't see any play. So that's obviously a big asterisk that you have to put behind this card, is that we actually don't know if this card will see play or not in the archetype we talked about. So this is something that we have to keep in mind. But I do believe that in terms of potential, it is by far the best yellow card and the one that is the most likely to have a strong impact on the meta. So some people might be very surprised that I haven't put Chien Flurry in this. Chien Flurry is the card that allows you to play a force card from your hand and give it ambush, considering how powerful it is in combination with Vader. I just believe that as much as I love Vader, I just think that having to draw like this very specific combination of cards in order to be able to use Vader is kind of very awkward, especially since Chien Flurry is not that amazing with other cards. So I think Chien Flurry is going to see play, but I just don't think it's... I just decided that it wouldn't make it to the top 3. I still think that if you're going to be running a Vader, you're most likely going to be running green, because Timely Intervention is just so much better than Chien Flurry. And Chien Flurry just doesn't combine very well with the rest of the set. So this is kind of my how I sit on the card. Next we got our blue-black color combination ranking, and on this one my confidence is quite high. I'm quite confident that my prediction is going to come true. And honorable mention, I decided to put Old Daka. Just a 6/6 for 5 stat line is not something that we get access to in Villainy, so it's just by itself very powerful. And the when play effect is actually pretty neat, because it turns out that even though there's just not that many night cards in the set, the few night cards that were shown to us are actually pretty strong. So it makes it so Old Daka is actually quite relevant. But really the big deal is the 6/6 for 5 with the 4th trait. I think is what makes this card very playable. If you're going to be running a Ninth archetype, something like a Mother Talzin archetype, I think this card is going to be really solid. Talking about the Ninth archetypes, we obviously have Karis. Karis, obviously 2/4 stat line available in that color combination is very nice to have. And the when defeated effect is also quite powerful if you're playing a Force deck. If you're running a Force Villainy deck and you're playing blue, you have to include this card 100%. It's a sticky unit that is difficult to interact with, that will give you the Force early on, and it gives you also a payoff by having the Force. So for me, that's going to be a really solid card, and it's going to see some play. Then we got the Talzin Assassin. I actually... so now that we know that the Force is much easier to get, then this card is just really amazing. So when I talked about this card earlier and I said I was not a big fan of it, that's because I didn't know how easy it was going to be to get the Force. But now that I know that Force is so easy to get, Talzin Assassin is such an amazing card. -3/-3 will kill a lot of stuff, and even if it doesn't kill stuff, just make something, nullify something, and get a 4/4 at the same time is actually quite okay. So it's flexible, can work on the space arena, on the ground arena. It's going to be a hard counter to some amount of decks. So it just simply is a great card. So it's an auto-include in any Force deck in Villainy. And in my opinion, it's the primary reason to be running a Force deck in Villainy is Talzin Assassin. On Gold Medal, I decided to include Darth Vader, obviously. This card is, as I said, Darth Vader combined with Energy Conversion Lab is one of the most powerful interaction in the entire game. The question is, which deck can really run that combination? So that's going to be kind of like the main question mark that we're going to put behind Darth Vader. As good as the card is, how many decks how many green, blue, black decks can realistically consider playing Vader can be running ECL? The cost of running ECL compared to Data Vaults is a massive cost. You're basically losing 8 HP by doing this. So as much as I believe that Vader ECL is one of the strongest interaction in the entire game, I'm actually not 100% confident that Vader is going to see play in the meta, or is going to see a lot of play in the meta or not. Because as I said, he's such a play. The cost to be running this card, and he really needs a very specific setup to work. Because I have to say, as I said, Vader combined with Shin Flurry is not super consistent, and you're doing a pretty big swing, but then it comes into play on 7 resource, and you also have to do card advantage to make it happen. So it's strong, but it's also a costly play. And once again, you need to very specifically draw those 2 combinations of cards. So I don't even think that Vader into yellow decks is going to be really good. I really think that Vader is going to be at its best in green, and is probably one of the most dependent on ECL ever. Like, this card without ECL is not even close to be the same power level. So even though I'm confident in putting it at the best blue-black card, and I'm confident in saying that this is the strongest interaction in the entire game, and Vader ECL is one of the most broken play you can make, I'm not... It is a very weird card to rate because it's so dependent on that very specific interaction. And if there's just simply no deck that wants to be playing ECL in that color combination, then Vader might... I can definitely see a world where Vader doesn't see any play, which is very weird to say, but that's possible. Regardless, I think that in the future, as more and more ways to give ambush basically gets printed, Vader is going to get increasingly more powerful. And that even includes if you want to play this card in Eternal. So I think it's just a really, really strong card. Next, we got our Vigilance Heroism ranking, and on this one, my confidence is also quite high. I have an honorable mention with Loth Wolf, which so far has been my favorite card in the set. What I love about this card is like it makes deck that normally would not really be playable, and it makes them playable. So basically, this card sees currently play in 3 decks, which is Palpatine's, the Palpatine blue control decks, Chancellor Palpatine control deck. It sees play in Kanan Jarrus, the new Kanan Jarrus leader, and it's really, really powerful in this deck because it's basically a Sentinel you can give a shield over and over again, which is just so insane. And then it's also quite good in Kazuda blue, as you can turn off the effect and turning into a Battlefield Marine that sometimes can be a Sentinel. So I love this card because it really sees plays in 3 decks that are really, really that otherwise wouldn't be playable if this card did not exist, and would not be nearly as good. So I think it's really nice. I think those kind of cards are the best kind of card to print. Unfortunately, there are 3 better cards in that color combination that I will talk about. In number 3, there is Itinerant Warrior. Itinerant Warrior is a great card because 4/4 for shield, for shield is really strong, and the one playability is very good. Be able to heal your base 3. You have to use the Force to be able to get it, so that will limit the amount of play this card sees play. But I think that even in an onto blue deck, you could actually play this card even without using the one play effect, and it would still be pretty good, because you would end up with a 4/2 shielded for 3, which is basically the same as Shin Hati, if you think about it. Shin Hati is hidden, I guess, on top of this, but basically, yeah, if you're running a Han2 blue deck, even if you're not running the Force, Itinerant Warrior is basically a Shin Hati, which is very nice. Next, we got the Ezra Bridger. Yeah, he's the 3/5 for 3. For that reason alone, deserves to be mentioned. And it has 4 relevant traits. Force, Jedi, Rebel, Spectre, which is insane. So he has many, many synergies with a wide amount of leaders. And then the on-attack ability is quite situational, but in the right deck can be very powerful. So Ezra Bridger is going to be a great addition to many, many blue-white decks. If you're running a Han 2 ECL, it's another 3/3 for 2 you can play on turn 1, and you can flexibly play on turn 2 at the 3/5. It's really a great card. Next, we got the gold medal. We got Yaddle. So Yaddle is probably the best 2-drop available in blue-white. There's specifically blue-white. 2 force sightline for 2. It makes it very resilient. It has the force traits, which allows you to get the force token early in the game. It has restore, which is always neat, and it also gives restore to your Jedi. So that is just a lot of text for a card that already has very good stats. So it's just a great card, and it's going to see play in a lot of blue-white decks. So yeah, it's one of those really, really push 2-drops that they've printed in this set, and it's going to be undeniably going to be the best blue-white card in the set. Moving on to Mono Blue. So Mono Blue was a very interesting category this month, this set, because it is by far the most stacked category, which is very unique. Normally, you would expect the double-colored cards to be more powerful, but the Mono Blue cards in this set were absolutely insane. It was very, very difficult to choose which one is going to see play. So my confidence on this one is medium. So first of all, on the honorable mention, I don't have one, I don't have two, I don't have three. I have four cards that I've decided to include in this honorable mention list. And on this one, there is Owen Lars, which is basically better Moisture Farmer, especially in a Force deck. The ability to give a cheap body that you can even play for 0 in a hand 2 deck that will give you a card back whenever it dies. And if you don't deal with it, it's just going to restore 2 every turn, which is very nice. This card is just so great. It's such an amazing card. Then we got Shirut Inway, which is one of the best Sentinel in the game, in my opinion. If you're playing a Force deck, it is the best Sentinel in the game. I think the only card that maybe you would play over Shirut would be a Charlton. If you're playing a Mono Blue deck, but other than this, Shirut is so great. The 3/5 and the fact that it gives -2 on attack whenever you use the Force is incredible. And the 3/5 for 4 already by itself is really, really solid. If this would have made it to the top 3 on any other list, but just because the Mono Blue category is so incredibly stacked, it did not manage to squeeze the top 3. This might be a huge mistake, but yeah, it was just so difficult to find space for other cards. Then we got the Night Sister Warrior, which is going to be an amazing card in Thrawn 2 because it draws you 2 cards. But even in a regular just Force deck, it's amazing. Very easy for this card to give you the Force very consistently early on in the game and gives you a card back when it dies. Just a very solid card that's going to see a lot of play. And then we got Shatterpoint, which is going to be the auto-include removal in any Force deck. Because it's basically how's it called? Fell the Dragon. No, it's basically Vanquish for 1 less. It's once again getting the Force in the Force deck is very easy. Barely is a restriction, and the fact that it can also defeat unit the 3 or less without the Force is also a nice little detail. So I think this card is really amazing, and it's gonna see play in every single Force deck as a 2 or 3 elves, as a way to get rid of very large units. So yeah, my bronze for this category is Ogdo Bogdo. So Ogdo Bogdo is amazing because he's not playable in every deck. Obviously, you need to find a way to damage it so he can attack. But it's a great addition to decks that are already very powerful. I think if you're playing a mid-range version of Kira, being able to play a 5/5 for 3, and then you can turn this into a 5/3 shielded that can attack on the turn after can be extremely powerful. Gives you a great body to play overwhelming barrage on it. Is very, very, very powerful. Is very, very powerful, and it's obviously great with Kazuda, as you can turn off the disadvantage and just turning into a 5/5 for 3. And then finally, last but not least, in hand 2, basically a 5/3 for 2 that you can play on turn 1. What the hell is going on? This card is just incredibly powerful. It's not as powerful as I initially thought it was, because there's a number of ways to get rid of 5/3 even on as early as turn 1. But it doesn't change the fact that it's an incredibly oppressive card, and if you don't find an answer for it, you're going to take an absolute beating. And it's one of the best turn 1 play you can make in the entire game. So it's a card that's going to be restricted to certain type of decks, but it is such a powerful card. I couldn't justify not putting it in the top 3. Moving on to the silver medal is Anakin Skywalker. Anakin Skywalker is obviously a great card and one of the best legendary in the set. What it does is very simple. It gives you a 5/7 body and it just kills something as it comes into play. Even if you can only trigger the -3/-3, it's still like a pretty good rate. It's pretty similar to Rebellion Hammerhead, but then it can be played on both Villainy and Heroism, which is very nice. And obviously it has the 4th Jedi Republic trait, which are all 3 relevant traits. And then not only that, obviously the card becomes a lot stronger if you have a deck that is capable of putting villainy and heroism cards in this card. There's a number of decks that can do this. We have the old Kylo, the new Kylo, the Chancellor Palpatine. There's a number of decks that can do that. And then once you get the double -3/-3, the card is really, really insane. So put a silver medal on this one. It's a really powerful card. Moving on, we have probably the most unexpected card, but nevertheless probably one of the probably the card from set 5 that's going to see the most amount of play, and that is Secretive Sage. It's a card that not many people talk about, and yet everybody plays it. Everybody plays it because for a number of reasons. First of all, 2/2 for 2 shielded has always been great in Star Wars Limited. Crafty Smuggler, L337, Director Cunning, all those cards see a wide amount of play in the game. So that obviously is great. Another thing is that how can you put Secret Sage as the best card in gold medal when we have like so many 2/4s? Something you gotta understand is that 2/2 shielded is better than 2/4 in a lot of cases. For example, Pink Tarkintown, which is one of the most classic play you can make in Star Wars Limited since the ban of Boba. Yeah, well, this card does not get ping for Tarkintown. You can ping it, but then you won't be able to Tarkintown behind it. Obviously, the huge relevant thing about this card is the fact that it's force. It's a force unit that's difficult to kill, that is going to be sticky. You play it in turn 1, you get a force token, and then if it gets damage, and it's going to be harder to interact with. It's really an easy way to enable the force. And obviously last but not least, it's also in blue. Blue is notorious for not having a lot of great 2-drops, and now it has one. Obviously there's been a couple of great 2-drops for both villainy and heroism being printed in this set, but I still believe that having an additional great 2-drop for blue was very, very much needed, and this card is going to see play. Okay, I'm going to make a bold prediction, but I think this card is going to see play in about 60 to 70% of blue decks, which is insane. And the fact that it's available for both heroism and villainy is also a really, really big deal. So it might not be the flashiest card, but it's a card that enables and makes false decks so much more consistent. It's the building block that allows the entire archetype to work, and it's going to see so much play, and it's going to have such a huge impact on the meta that I think this card deserves a gold medal for all those reasons. Next, we're going into Villainy Command. And as usual, this color combination is heavily relying on set 1 cards to actually be a thing. My confidence on this ranking is quite high though. So we deck into the bronze medal. Unfortunately, this color combination did not really get a lot going on. But we're going to start with the bronze medal here with Praetorian Guard. Praetorian Guard is, I think, a great card to pick up from Vader, because it will give you a 2/5 Sentinel, and because Vader has 5 attack, it will be Sentinels as it comes out. I think it's a solid card. Will it see play 100%? Deserve to be remains to be seen. I don't think it's guaranteed this card is going to see competitive play, but to me it is. I've been looking through this list of cards in green black, and I didn't find anything else that I could put instead. So this is my bronze. In silver, we got Vanny. Command Villainy is notorious for having very bad 2-drops, and Vanny is a pretty decent one. He's a 2/4 for 2 with very decent stat line. The ability is not very relevant, but he has 3 very relevant traits. Is Imperial Sith Official. Official will allow him to turn on Royal Guard, for example. In the Palpatine deck, Imperial is great with Tarkin. So once again, just like the previous the Praetorian Guard, I'm not 100% sure. I'm actually not very confident that it's going to see a lot of competitive play, but to me it is the second best command villainy card that I could find. Gold medal, very far away above anything else available in that color combination, is Craving Power. And Craving Power is, in my opinion, the new Overwhelming Barrage. So obviously it's not as good as Overwhelming Barrage, but because you don't get to spread the damage. But the fact that the +2/+2 is permanent is kind of a big deal. It's kind of nice. So, in my opinion, this is a very, very strong card. It's going to see a lot of play. So, as long as Overwhelming Barrage exists, I don't necessarily think that this card is going to see a tremendous amount of play. But as soon as the Barrage rotates out, this card will rotate in and it will see. Obviously, if you're playing a deck that needs to play more than 3 copies of Barrage, then Craving Power is going to be huge. So, yeah, it's not as good as Barrage, but people will play it on top of Barrage. You can be guaranteed of this, especially in Daredevil decks where you get 60 cards, so your chances of actually drawing a particular card is actually lower. It makes it Craving Power so much more of an interesting option as well. It's going to see play in Kira 100%. It's going to see play in Vader 4. It's just going to see play in a lot of green-black decks as an additional copies of Overwhelming Barrage. Really, really a powerful card. Next, we got the command Heroism. And my confidence on this one is medium. First of all, we got honorable mention Yoda's lightsaber, and Heath Koth. So a color combination that was stacked with a lot of great cards, so it was really hard to choose. Whenever I put a lot of honorable mention like this, it means that the color combination was really competitive. Yoda is a great top end for any Force deck in that color combination. Yoda lightsaber is a great for Force enablers, but I also saw a lot of people suggesting that this card was going to be great in Sabine. I don't actually don't know how much that's going to be the case, but it's definitely an interesting card you could put in Sabine because Sabine never had access to +2/+1 upgrades in the past, so it's going to be interesting to see if this card makes it in there as well, even though they don't run any fourth. And then Heath Koth is another auto-include if you're running a Force focus green-white deck. The 5/4 that ramps you is just amazing. My bronze for this color combination is Killiran Beck. And Killiran Beck is amazing. It's first of all, it has amazing stats. 7 for 7 cost is really incredible. And it has a really powerful one play ability that allows you to search for a 3-drop on play. So it's kind of like a mini Om 1. And it's a Om 1 that you can search from U-Wing Reinforcement, which is huge. So you can play U-Wing, you get yourself a Killiran Beck, and you get yourself another 3-drop. So it does make U-Wing Reinforcement a lot better. It's a strong value engine. It has False Jedi trait, which are very relevant. It's one of the best powerful card you can kind of like jam in here. The fact that you can actually kill a Luke Skywalker without dying, and the fact that it survives from Luke double -3/-3 is very relevant. It's a very powerful card. It's quite expensive, but I think it's really strong. And the impact on the game, sometimes it's a 7-drop that doesn't have like an immediate impact on the game. So I think those are like 2 massive weaknesses. So yes, it has additional units, but if that additional unit is not a Sentinel, doesn't actually stabilize you, that can be a problem for the card. So it's not good in every situation, but in some situation it's really amazing. And once again, I think this card would have been number 2 or number 1 on any other categories, but just the command heroism categories, this set is so stacked, just like it was in the previous set, that it's hard to find to put it higher in the list. Next, we got Obi-Wan Kenobi. So 3/5 for 3 is already an excellent stat line. In a color combination, I didn't really have access to it, unless it was paired with red or yellow. So this really gives access to 3/5 to a new color combination, which is great. Now Heroism has access to 3/5 for 3 in every 4 color combination, which is great. It has 3 relevant traits: Force, Jedi, and Republic. And icing on the cake, it has one of the most powerful. It has a very powerful ability. It comes out as a Sentinel, and it just returns as a Sentinel every time you play a Force unit, which is very easy to do. So yeah, what else can you ask for? Amazing stats, very powerful, really relevant ability, excellent to be brought back from Om-1 or a card that you can bring from Killiran Beck. I honestly don't think Killiran Beck would be as good if Obi-Wan Kenobi did not exist. There's just so much good thing going on with this card. It's hard to emphasize. It's going to be a near auto inclusion in in any command, heroism, mid-range, and control decks. No question about it. It's such an amazing card. And in gold, what else could I put but Gungi? Gungi, one of the best 2-drop in the game. We already had access to Battlefield Marine as the best 2-drop in the game. I don't think, I mean, Gungi and Battlefield Marine are different from each other. Gungi is more of a force enabler or something that is great at carrying a lightsaber, while Battlefield Marine is more of a card that you want to run in an aggressive deck with rebel synergies, like with fleet lieutenants or wing leaders. So they're both different. I think, obviously, Battlefield Marine is far better in the Sabine deck, while Gungi is more something you want to run in a force deck. But needless to say that this is probably one of the best force enablers you could hope for. Comes out at 2/5 that's so difficult to kill, and it will carry, of course, the powerful General's Blade, because Gungi also has the good idea of being a Jedi, and this is one of the best like Gungi into General's Blade is going to be one of the most powerful interaction in the new set, and if you don't have an answer for it, you will die. So it's really powerful, and yeah, and for me it is undeniably the best, the best command heroism card in the set. Mono command, my confidence on this one is medium, and my bronze is going to be Sifo Diaz. So I had a really hard time finding a good card to fill the top 3 spots. Sifo Diaz might not see play in this upcoming set, but in my opinion, it is the card that has the highest amount of potential. As more clones gets printed, his ability to grab himself of 4-cost clones as he dies is really incredible, especially if you combine it with Thrawn. The Thrawn green, and you get yourself like 2 clones as it dies, is honestly a disgusting combo. So even though I don't necessarily think this card is going to see play right away because there's simply just not enough good clones in the game, I think this card is only going to get better as more clones are printed, and obviously clones are a pretty massive part of the Star Wars universe. So I wouldn't be surprised if Sifo Diaz becomes absolutely broken at some point in the game. So yeah, it's a great card in terms of potential. Unfortunately, I don't think it's quite there yet. But for me, that's the reason I put it in bronze medal. Silver medal is Oppo Rancis. Not as big of a potential as Sifo Diaz, but just a very solid card. Obviously, the fact that he's double green strongly limits the amount of plays he can see, but his ability is far from irrelevant. There's a lot of Restore 1 card, like you got like Yularen, you got cards like Peacekeeper, Sundari Peacekeeper. You have cards like Amir Akbar, who have Restore 1. So you can turn on this card relatively easy, and as soon as you get either Raid 2 or Restore 2, which are the 2 main traits the 2 main keywords that you're looking to turn on, that are quite easy to turn on in that color combination, then the card becomes insane. Then you suddenly have a 5/5 for 3, or 3/5 Restore 2 for 3, which is insanely good. And it's not that difficult to turn on. And once again, the floor for the card is really high, because at the worst case scenario, you get yourself a 3/5 for 3. So in my opinion, this card is a near auto inclusion in our double green decks. Also has Force Jedi keyword. So I think it's a very solid card. It's gonna be niche, of course, because of the double green being one of the worst color combination in the game. But I think in the right deck, it's gonna see play, and that's why I put in silver medal. Gold medal, far above the other cards, is Maz Kanata. Basically, Fleet Lieutenant, but with 1 extra health, but for Force unit, and there's so many great Force cards in this set. Especially a lot of Force cards that have low attack and high health, which typically Mace Kanata and Fleet Lieutenant General loves to basically give +2 attack to a unit that has low attack and high health, and most of the Force units have low attack and high health, which makes Mace Kanata even better. The fact it's playable for both heroism and villainy is a big deal as well. And obviously you get yourself a 3/4 as well in the mix. What a great card. and it's going to see play in any false deck that runs green. Next, we got our black-red color combination, and confidence on this ranking is medium. First of all, we got Strike Ship. Strike Ship is a great inclusion because Villainy Aggression was really missing a good 2-drop, and now it got one. Strike Ship, basically a 3/3 overwhelm in space. I don't necessarily think that this card is going to see play everywhere, but it's going to see play in aggression, black-red aggro decks. It's also really, really good in Cat Bane, as it gives yourself once again another 2-drop. Cat Bane is really getting a lot of great 2-drop this set, which is really nice. So yeah, just a pretty solid card that's gonna see a lot of play. Not as good as A-Wing, I believe, but not really that far off from the card in my opinion. In silver, I decided to put HK47. Another great 2-drops for black red in general, with some really good stats and a pretty relevant ability. 2/4's Villainy is not as good as Heroism at taking advantage of 2/4. It doesn't have access to leaders like Rey or Anakin that can really take advantage of unit with low attack value. So I don't think 2/4 statline is nearly as good in Villainy that is in Heroism, but I still believe that this card is quite nice. Also, the fact it's a droid is very relevant for the invisible hand that can fetch, of course, droids on top 8. So I think it's really nice. So yeah, it's a really solid card that's going to see some play. And on gold medal, I decided to put Grand Inquisitor. I really hesitated whether I put HQ47s or Grand Inquisitor in top 1. For me, it's very close. They're quite different cards. But I believe that ultimately, Grand Inquisitor just feel the needs a little bit better than other card. It's really, really good. It's by far the biggest inclusion for the Grand Inquisitor deck, but it's also quite good in any aggressive red-black deck, especially ones that care about the Force, because you get yourself a 4/4 for 3 that cannot be attacked the turn to right, which I think is a pretty big deal. So, this card is very solid, also has some really relevant trait, False Imperial Inquisitor. So it's going to see some play, and yeah, it's a cool card. Once again, I think red-black has historically been Star Wars Limited the weakest color combination in the entire game, and I think it's going to, unfortunately, I think it's going to continue to be so. So even though I speak quite highly about those 3 cards, unfortunately, the fact that they are red-black cards will limit how much play they're going to see in the meta. Then we got Aggression Heroism. And in Aggression Heroism, my confidence in this ranking is really high. Starting off with a bronze medal is Mace Windu. Mace Windu is pretty much an auto-include in any mid-range deck that runs the Force, gives yourself a 6/6 overwhelm for 6, and that can deal 4 damage to unit when it comes to play. It's kind of a wrecker, but for the Force, which is awesome. And the fact that, but using the Force is far less of an inconvenience than having to lose a resource, to say the least. So, really awesome card, and we'll see play in pretty much every single Force deck that runs red-white. Another Force payoff is obviously Ki Adi Mundi. This one doesn't kill stuff, but it draws your card, and the value from this card is just absurd. Get yourself a 4/4 for 4 and draw 2 cards. I've said before, and I said again, drawing cards in Star Wars Limited not nearly as good as it is in other card games, but it still matters, especially in some very grindy matchups. And the fact that you can draw that many cards and still put a pretty large body on the field at the same time is so incredible. This card is going to be an auto-include in any red-white Force deck, whether it's going to be in the main or in the sideboard. It's going to be there, and it's going to be an awesome card and a big reason to be playing Force, in my opinion. Moving on to my number 1 is going to be Adi Gallia. Not much of a surprise. Another amazing 2-drops that this set is providing us. Just really good stats and a relevant ability and very relevant traits. It's also in a combination that really wants to use that. It's going to be great in Quinlan. It's going to be amazing in Anakin. So yeah, this is undeniably my gold medal. I think the only red-white deck that is not going to be running Adi Gallia is probably Han 2. So yeah, just a great card. Next, we got, of course, our Mono-aggression. My confidence one is quite low because Mono-aggression has been a very weak color in this specific set, so it was very hard to find what cards were going to be the best. In bronze, I decided to put DRK1 probe droids. We're going to be in a meta where there's going to be a lot of 2/2 shielded units, and obviously DRK1 probe droids eats those units for dinner, so it's pretty nice. Not as good as being a 2/3 saboteur to counter those type of 2/2s, but it's pretty close to that. And the fact that it's a droid means that you can also fetch it out of Providence, which I think is not Providence, Invisible Hand, which is a big deal. So I think it might be a card that's going to be depending on the meta whether you're going to be running to include it, but at the very least it will see play in Piet Red. In silver, I decided to put Jedi in Hiding, a card that not many people talked about, but I think is quite good. I was actually not super impressed by this card when it got first revealed, and it kind of fell over my radar, but I got the occasion to play with and against it, and I found it's a card to be pretty good. Yes, it has pretty bad stat, but the fact that it's hidden means it's likely to be able to survive for at least one attack. It is Force, which is a big deal. And once again, the ability, you use the Force, you get to discard your opponent a card, which is very relevant in red because as you get to reduce the amount of cards in your opponent, it makes Force throw better. So I think this card is likely to see play in some sort of red Force deck in combination with Force Throw. Kind of makes your opponent discard a card. Is really good in combination with Force Throw and gives a body at the same time. I think it's very solid. And my gold medal goes to Quinlan Voss. Quinlan Voss, I think if you're running a deck that can really take advantage of his ability, I think the card is very oppressive. Comes on the 4/5 for 4. Your opponent has to kill it. If it doesn't kill it, it's going to get slapped so hard, assuming you play the right deck for it. But there's a lot of ways to give it +2 attack and attack right away. You can, if you're playing Greed, you can combine it with Mace Canada for a swing on 8 to the base, which is insane. You can also deal 6 to a unit and then 2 to the base as well, which is great. It's obviously amazing with DL44 blasters, and it's also amazing with our friend Anakin Skywalker, who is going to have a built-in +2 attack. And there's many other ways. You can just give him a lightsaber or whatever. Like, there's just a lot of ways to use him and to really slap some crazy amount of damage on the opponent without the opponent being able to interact much with it. So, really, really nice. You need to really build around him for him to be good, but in right card. And also, it's something that is easy to overlook, but is available for both heroism and villainy. Talking about villainy, my confidence in this one is relatively high. Once again, usually mono black, mono whites are pretty easy to predict because there's just not that many cards in those colors. So my bronze is going to be a surprise for probably many of you, including myself, but I decided to put the Sun. It's actually a suggestion for Baton, and the reason why this card is actually surprisingly good is because turns out it is the most amount of stats you can have for 7-drop in the entire game. Because while you have the Force, which is pretty easy to do if you're playing a Force-focused deck, which you should if you're running this card actually is 8/8 for 7, and that's assuming you got no other friendly units in play. So obviously you get other units, you get +2, and it's not raid 2, it's +2 attack, meaning that this 8 attack will also apply if your unit is attacking you. So that is pretty nasty. So you get yourself an 8/8 for 7 with the Force. That is a lot of pressure, and it also gives +2 attack across the board to all the other units. So I think this is like a lot of pressure that you can put with this card. And once again, we are in mono. I don't think this card is going to see a lot of play. I think it's going to be very, very niche. But in the right deck, in the right meta, I could see this card see a little bit of play. So this is why I decided to give it bronze medal. Silver medal, decided to put Forged Starfighter. And the reason for this card to be in this list is simply because this card is going to see play in my opinion, one of the strongest deck in the game, which is Vader 4 Swarm, Vader 4 Yellow, Space Swarm. And obviously this card is just a slight improvement over the Droid Starfighters, though the Droid Starfighters are 1/2 Saboteur, which is pretty bad. This card is basically better. It gives you just one more 1-drop you can play on turn 1. The fact it's hidden is not super relevant, but it just is more pressure, just is a 2/1 stat line is just better than the 1/2 stat line in those kind of aggressive deck. Eden is not completely irrelevant, so it's a small improvement for one of the most powerful deck in the game, and that's the reason why I put it silver medal. Gold medal, undeniably and far, far above all the other cards, is Darth Tyrannus, which is, in my opinion, the number one reason to be playing a villainy false deck. Yeah, just a 4/3 Amber Shielded is really, really strong. Once again, I did not speak very positively about this card when it was first released because I just didn't know how easy it would be to get the Force, but it turns out that with all the great 2-drops and all the great false enabler they've given us, it is so easy to get the Force, and it makes it so you can, and the fact that you don't even have to spend the Force, you just have to have the Force for this card to work, is just incredible. It's really, really powerful, and undeniably one of the best card, one of the best Force payoff in villainy in the entire game. Going now to Mono-heroism, not as powerful as the black one. In number 3, decided to put the daughter. I'm not a big fan of this card. I just think she's quite good with the 9-cost leader. The 9-cost leader. So how is she called? Avar Chris. I think she's quite good with Avar Chris. But other than this, it's very, very niche. But I think she's gonna see a little bit of play there. Then we got a card that nobody talks about, but I think is quite good. It's a Gun Warrior. The Gun Warrior is... So, my reasoning behind this card being good is very simple. Outer Rim Outlaws, which is a 3/3 shielded for 3 in blue, sees a lot of play, notably in Anakin. I think this card is better than... because it restores you, so yes, only it's 2 health, but the fact that it restores you is a pretty big deal. So if you're playing an Anakin, you might be playing Gun, depending on the meta, you might be playing Gun Warrior over the Outer Rim Outlaws. And if you are playing this, obviously, an Anakin deck that doesn't run blue, then Gun Warrior becomes one of the best 3-drop you can run. So I think this card is quite solid. It has a lot more competition, of course, with this new set, especially in the 3-drop area where there's so many good cards. But I still think this card is very playable. So silver medal for the Gun Warriors. And in gold medal, we got Grogu. Simply because this card is really, really awesome in Hantu as a turn 1 play. So, I think this card is not as good as it used to be, as I was expecting, because you really need to play it on turn 1 for this to be good. But undeniably, as a turn 1 play in Hantu, it's going to be great. And for me, it deserved the gold medal. In the neutral cards, my confidence here is quite high. Once again, neutral cards is quite easy to guess because there's just not that many cards in there. So we're going into it, and we're going to start with our bronze medal with another card that nobody talks about. It's Peli Moto. I don't think this card is quite there for constructed, but the fact that it's quite difficult to kill, and it can really be punishing if you plays a vehicle, and then you can put experience on it every single turn. If your does not answer it, it's going to be really, really strong. It's probably too slow for constructed, unfortunately, but it's really, really strong in drafts. So, yeah, it's my bronze medal. In silver, no surprise, we got the Porgs. Okay, so whether the Porgs are going to be good is going to really depend on the meta. But there's a number of things that the Porgs are good at. They're really good at absorbing Power Dark Side. They're really good at absorbing 4 throws, which, as we know, is going to see a tremendous amount of play. There's a lot of cool creative synergies in the set. So that's going to, of course, is going to be a really big... It's another way to put a cheap units for Rex Unity of Purpose decks. So I think Porg are going to be niche, but they're going to see some constructed play, and that's why I put them in silver medal. And in gold medal, constructed lightsaber. This lightsaber is not as good as some of the other lightsabers in the game, but it's not far off. And the fact that it is playable in every single deck mean that this deck is going to be really is going to see some play. It's going to see some play because if you're playing villainy, let's say, you got access to you need to play like more than 3 lightsabers because your deck is very based on that. You're going to be playing like full-on lightsaber, and then the next best thing you can play is constructed lightsaber, in my opinion. So it's like it's a card that's gonna see some play. Remains to be seen by how much, but I think it's likely. For me, it's a safe bet that this is gonna be the neutral card that's gonna see the most amount of play. Next, we go on the bases, and there's a lot to say about those. My confidence on this ranking is quite high, though. Moving on to my bronze. My bronze, I decided to put Virgin's Temple, the one that gives you the Force token if you have a unit that has 4 HP or more remaining HP. The reason why I like this base is because it is such an easy way to get the Force. Blue often have units that have 4 health or not, and it's also a way for you to get the Force without requiring to get a bunch of Force units in play, which is nice. So I like this card. Will it see a lot of play? I doubt it. And the reason is because most of the time, whenever you want to, most of the unit that's 4 health that you play on turn 1 are Force unit anyways, so then you might as well just play the 28 HP base that will attack you and give you the Force. And also, the fact that obviously you're losing 3 HP is a very big deal. So I don't think it's going to see a lot of play, but for me, it's the third best base in the game. Second best base in the game is Mystic Monastery. Well, very simple. I think once again this base is going to be quite niche because losing out on 3 HP compared to the 20 HP base is a pretty big deal. But if you're running, it's one of the only way to get yourself the Force on turn 1, which can matter for certain type of cards. And it's also an unconditional way. You don't need to build your deck at all around it to get the Force, and that's very, very high value. So you are basically giving yourself a health penalty for running the Force, but you basically not giving yourself a deck building restriction, which I think is something that can be very valuable to some decks. I think it's going to be very niche, but I think it's going to be the second most played deck card in the set. And then obviously number 1, we got ourselves the 4 28 HP. There's actually 8 of them, even though they all do the exact same thing. They give you the Force if you attack with a Force unit, and they are going at 28 HP base. So I think that if you're running a Force deck, you're going to be playing those bases because it's the one that gives you the least amount of HP penalty for doing that. And it turns out that we have been given an absurd amount of an amazing Force 2-drop, which is very intentional from the designers, by the way, that they really pushed very hard the Force enablers, like the 2-drops in Force, meaning that getting the Force even early on in the game is ridiculously easy. So obviously those bases have the limitation of forcing a deck building limitation, and they also don't allow you to get the Force on turn 1 like Monastery can do. But obviously, for some, if you don't care about this, then you would rather have the 3 HP, and the fact that they're available on all 4 colors means that they will obviously see the most play. So obviously those cards are technically 4 different cards and not 1. So it's a little bit unfair to that degree, but even if you separate, I have no idea which one of the 4 is going to see the most play, but I'm pretty confident that any of those 4 bases will be the most played base in the set. And I think that if I had to do a ranking where I would rank those guys separately, I would just simply put 3 of those 4 bases at random in the top 3, which wouldn't be very interesting. That's why I decided to compile them as number 1. But yeah, the 20 HP Force base are going to be the primary way for you to get the Force in this set, and that's because we got so many great Force enablers. Now let's talk about the leaders. So my confidence on this one is very low, and the reason for it is very simple. Is that I think that I haven't done my leader playlist, my leader tier list, because leaders in the set are very difficult to rank because they are all very archetype dependent, which means that their playability really depends on how powerful the archetype is. I also believe that leaders in the set are incredibly weak. It's a little bit similar to set 4, where we have a lot of strong cards, but the leaders are just so weak. So it makes them very difficult to rank them. And also, I also think that there's no really any specific leader that stands out. Most of the leaders are kind of like in this gray zone where you don't really know if they're going to be good or not. So, moving on to my honorable mentions. I have two honorable mentions. We have Ava Chris and Kylo Ren. So Ava Chris, I think she's really good because being able to get the Force unconditionally, which allows you to run like a 33 HP base or even a 30 HP base, is very valuable. And you can even run Force base plus her, so you can actually get the Force multiple times and get yourself an earlier deployment. I still would rather have a 30 HP or 33 HP base with her, but that's an option that is available to you. She also comes out as an 8-10, which is really, really oppressive for a leader. Can be really, really strong deployment. Obviously, the elephant in the room with this card and the problem with it, like she has a very strong leader ability, but the fact that she deploys on 9, realistically she will deploy on 8, but even deploying on 8 is just really, really bad, really, really slow. I've tested her. People will say that you can consistently make it deploy on 7 or 6 are crazy. It's a leader, realistically it's a leader that deploys on 8. And she's not as impactful on her deployment as Palpatine is. So she suffers the same problem as Palpatine. She gets absolutely wrecked by aggro. So my opinion on her is pretty straightforward. She's kind of like the Palpatine for heroism. She's going to be quite good. She can be quite good if you're playing in a very mid-range, slow meta, control meta. If you're playing in an aggro meta, she's going to be terrible. But for that reason alone, she deserves an honorable mention because I think in a very specific meta, I think she could work. Kylo Ren is an interesting one. He's very hard leader to evaluate because there's times where he's really, really strong and his deployment is just incredible. And if you have the right combination of upgrades into your discard pile, it can really turn the game upside down. And he has in his color combination, he has a lot of tools to stay alive, which I think is great. With that being said, the fact that you have to pay for the upgrades you play on him whenever it gets to deploy, meaning that his deployment is, yes, you get to deploy him, and you get to put a bunch of upgrades on him, but you also have to pay for those upgrades. So, is it really stronger than deploying another 7 cost leader and then just spending your 7 resources in what you normally would? Is the Kylo deployment actually better than that? It really depends on what kind of grade you pull. And it's going to be very inconsistent. The other issue with Kylo Ren is the fact that he has a leader ability that actually doesn't help you stabilize the game. The third problem with Kylo Ren is also the fact that you have to put a bunch of upgrades in your deck that are not necessarily the best choice for your leader, for your deck. And as soon as Kylo Ren dies, then you have all the upgrades in your deck that basically don't do anything. So, it's a leader that is very hard to evaluate because most of the time he doesn't do much, but sometimes he just wins the game. Like crazy. Depending on if you have the right amount of upgrades for the deck. So, I put in a honorable mention just because of his ability to kind of steal games out of nowhere. But yeah, I'm not really confident that he's going to be meta. To be fair, I'm not confident that any of the leaders in the set, in this top, in this list are going to be meta. Which leads me to my bronze medal, which is Obi-Wan Kenobi. Obi-Wan is, in my opinion, the best leader that utilizes the Force. On the heroism side, I think his leader ability is extremely powerful. His main problem here is going to be his leader deployment. Comes out as 3/6, is very weak. And cannot give experience to himself, which is kind of a bummer. So, yeah. I think he's good. And I think if you're going to be running... I think a leader... I don't think if you're running a Force deck, you necessarily need to be running a leader that utilizes the Force. Most of the time, you're just better off going for just a really, really strong classic leader and just putting a bunch of cards in the deck that utilize the Force. But it's undeniable that if you're going to be running a Force deck, having a way to utilize, to recycle those force tokens into experience token is very, very nice. So for all those reasons, I think this card is gonna see a little bit of competitive play. Once again, I'm not confident that it's gonna be meta or anything, but I put it in bronze medal because he's undeniably the best force-centric leader available to heroism. Next, we got in silver, we got Cunning Jarrus. Cunning Jarrus is tricky because he requires very specific cards to be put in your deck to actually work. But if you do that, if you manage to put together a strong deck that has a lot of creatures and specters in it, it's undeniably gonna be a powerful leader. Comes out as a 5/8 shielded as a deployment is incredible, and even like 3/6 shielded is not bad, to be fair, and it can give this +2/+2 later on in the game. And it has loads of great traits, Force, Jedi, Rebel, Spectre, just like this unit counterpart. And his leader ability is also incredible if you have a high amount of Spectres and Critters and Spectres. You get to get those Loth Wolf, the 3/3 shielded, 3/3 Sentinels, you can shield them over and over again. You can shield over and over again, like you get the 4/1 hidden for 2. This card is really great whenever you get to shield it, these creatures. So I think Cunning Jarrus red or Cunning Jarrus double blue, I think those decks have a chance to be competitive. I think Cunning is also a leader that is only going to grow stronger and stronger as more creators and more Spectre units are going to be included. If you're a fan of the Spectre, Cunning Jarrus is a far, far stronger payoff for running a Spectre deck than something like Hera. So I would definitely advise you, if you're a fan of the Spectres, I would definitely advise you to shift over from Hera and to play Cunning instead. Obviously, the major limitation of Cunning is we know that leaders that have very specific unit types that they play around are going to be limited. We saw this with Piet. And we also know that 6 deploy leaders also have an issue. So I'm not confident, I'm not 100% confident that this is going to see meta play. But it's undeniably an interesting leader, and for me, it is a clear number 2 of this set. My number 1 is going to be Mother Talzin. And basically, Mother Talzin is, in my opinion, the only leader in this expansion that I'm quite confident that is going to see competitive play. I don't think it's going to be meta defining, I don't think it's going to be all over the place, but I'm quite confident that Mother Talzin is going to see some competitive play. She has excellent stat line, a 3/7 for 5 deployment. She is also kind of alone in her niche. She is by far the best villainy leader to utilize the Force. It's a similar concept that with Obi-Wan, where yes, you don't need to be running a Force-focused leader to be able to use the Force archetype, but having a way to recycle those Force tokens and do something useful with them is very nice, and Mother Talzin can do that. She has a strong on-attack ability, so she's not as good as a lot of people have been comparing to Quinlan. She's not even close to be the same power level as Quinlan, but she's close enough that I think she might see some play. She also got a lot of support with basically some of the best card available in blue-black are basically card that supports her archetypes. So she got a lot of support, and she's quite strong as a leader. So in my opinion, she's likely to see some competitive play. And if you want to run a very Force-focused deck in villainy, Mother Talzin is your best bet. It remains to be seen whether the red version, the green version, or the yellow version are going to be the best ones. But those are definitely strong opportunities for Mother Talzin to see play in competitive. And for me, it is the best leader in the set. As we move on to our best non-base, non-leader cards in the set, I just want to let you know that Home 1, you can get an Home 1 for less than €10 on Card Market, a card that has seen tremendous amount of play in set 4, and this might continue in set 5. Moving on now to our non-leader, non-base. And my confidence on this one is quite low, simply because it's very, very difficult to estimate the power level to do like a ranking of all the cards in the game. It's very, very difficult. The more cards there is that you compare the cards to, the more difficult it is to rank them. Starting off with honorable mention, we have 3 of them. And as you can see, the 2 drops from that were introduced are going to be an honorable mention. Of course, 2 drops we know are extremely important. They are the pillars that are holding together the decks, and those are obviously very powerful 2 drops. We also have Darth Vader in it. So Darth Vader, as I said, is a very tricky one to rank. Some people might be super surprised to see Darth Vader not even breaking in the top 3. And the reason for it, as I said, is that as strong as he is, and as insane his interaction with ECL is, you still need to be playing a very, very specific deck to be able to run Vader. And that, in my opinion, it gives a big, big question mark on Vader, because the fact that it's so limited in playing combined with green, that you have to play ECL. Yes, okay, you can run it with Timely Intervention, but once he plays with Timely Intervention, he's not nearly as good, because then you have to wait until up to 7 and do card advantage to be able to play him, or you need to wait all the way up to 8, will start to be very late. And Vader, unfortunately, is a pretty mediocre card when he's just being played as a 6 drop. So, is he really gonna be in decks that don't run ECL? And if it does, then the card is gonna see a lot of play, but I'm pretty convinced that he really is so much better in ECL deck that, and the cost of running ECL over Data Vault is so massive that it makes it so it's going to be complicated to see whether we think Vader is going to see play or not. And that's why it's only an honorable mention. My number 3 pick may be controversial, but I think it is correct. Craving Power. Craving Power is the new overwhelming barrage. Yes, the fact that you can't spread the damage across the multiple units is a big deal, but the fact that the +2/+2 bonus is permanent is really big, and Overwhelming Barrage being one of the strongest cards in the game, if not the strongest card in the game, even a slightly worse version of it is still gonna be incredibly powerful. The fact that you can attach this on any unit is also very nice. You can play this on the space unit. It's very flexible. The fact that you don't really care if it gets destroyed. All this is just making this card really, really powerful. So it's gonna see play as at least as in addition to Overwhelming Barrage in a wide variety of green-black decks. It's gonna make Vader 4 a lot stronger. It's going to make it's gonna make Vader 4 a lot stronger. It's gonna make it's gonna make Kira a lot stronger. It's also a great upgrade to decks that are already very powerful, which is another thing that is going to be really, really important about this card. My silver medal goes to Gungi, which is the best of those 2-drop double color 2-drops that we had access to. One of the best force enabler in the entire game, and an amazing, amazing recipient of General's Blade. It's going to be a great, great reason to be playing a Force deck in Heroism, especially in Grade. Is one of the best 2-drop in the game. But obviously, I'm probably not going to be surprising you more than... This is going to be probably the most surprising winner you've ever saw in a video of Thug Hot Takes. But here, my favorite card... I think what I believe to be, not my favorite card, but what I believe to be the strongest and most impactful card in the entire set is Secretive Sage. So you might be shocked by this because at the end of the day, this is just a Crafty Smuggler. Crafty Smuggler, yes, sees a wide amount of play, but he's not like meta-defining good, even though there's actually some counter-argument to be said about this. I think Crafty Smuggler is way more impactful on the meta than you think he is. Secretive Sage is so much better than Crafty Smuggler because it has the Force trait, and it allows you to enable those Force bases so incredibly consistently. You might be very surprised that I'm rating Secretive Sage as a Force enabler higher than Gugi, higher than Adigalia, and higher than Yodel. And the reason why I'm doing this is because I believe that 2-2 shielded is better than being a 2-4, first of all. So yes, those guys have abilities to make up for that, but also keep in mind that Secretive Sage is playable in both Villainy and Heroism. That means that Secretive Sage is going to be the most widely played units in the entire game, at least from set 5. My prediction is that I think Secretive Sage is going to be the most played card of set 5. It's going to be played absolutely everywhere. And it's going to have a huge impact because it gives you the consistency you need. Because if you think about it, and you look at every single deck that wants to run the Force, you will see that most of the time usually they're going to have 1 or 2 great Force card that they can play on turn 1, that they're really happy to play on turn 1 to enable the Force. That's not really consistent enough. Secret Sage gives you that second or third Force enabler on turn 1 that you really need. And the fact is playable in both Villainy and Heroism is absolutely insane of an advantage. It's also a great upgrade for the Gar Saxon. Now you can play Gar Saxon green. You can even play Gar Saxon double blue. So the impact that this card has on the meta is incredible. Also, whenever you play double blue had the reputation of having a lot of very bad 2-drops. Now with Yaddle and Secret Sage, it's going to have a much consistent 2-drop that's going to be enabling those decks to work. So it's like this card is the little grain of salt that makes a lot of decks possible that were not possible before. And it's going to see play everywhere. It's going to see play in every single... It's going to be played in about 70 to 80% of blue decks, which is insane. So I think in terms of impact on the meta and how much it's going to see play, even though it's not a very flashy card, Secretive Sage is the best card in the set, in my opinion. So I know this is a really big hot takes, but this is what I truly believe. So let me know in the comments below if I'm wrong. This is the end of this video. Let me know if I missed any cards. As I said, this is not only my opinion, this is also the opinion of other Enigma members, even though I had the last say on what ended up being on the list. I basically consulted the opinion of the other members of Team Enigma. As we know, we are some of the best players. They are some of the best players in Europe. They win PQs every week. They are absolutely insane. And we've did quite a bit of playtest, and this is kind of like what we found out. Thank you so much for following that video, and I'll see you next time.